This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories, and welcome to my review of the Batman Arkham series. I'll be going over all 4 games, at least the main ones. I have not played Arkham Origins Blackgate, which I heard isn't amazing, but who knows, I may get it. But I'll be playing the 4 big wide release games. I've already played them and streamed them. I'll be going over them now. So I'll be going over them in review. And let's go chronological order, although I did play in release order. I've sectioned them up on the playlist in chronological, so I'll be going over them. I will also go over Cold Heart, the DLC, and the other Arkham Knight DLCs, and the Harley Quinn's Revenge in a separate video. For this one, I'll only be going over the main story for each of them, and talking about the side missions. The only story-based DLC I'll be talking about is Season of Infamy, since you can play that in the main game of Arkham Knight without going to other stuff, and I feel like it's fair to do that since I played them in my playthroughs. So let's go in, starting with Batman Arkham Origins. Batman Arkham Origins, supposedly, is a pretty good game, although I think it is the weakest of the franchise. I still do enjoy it and think it is fun. I think that it does have some pretty decent side missions, and the story is pretty good, but the one twist feels just a little odd, but I am still fine with it. I think that with both this and tonight, if you were looking forward to this game from trailers and stuff, this definitely hurt a lot more, but I got both of these games after the release, since I didn't really have a PS4 when Night was released, and back when Origins was released, I think that I was either not into the franchise as much, because I do have a funny story, which I'll tell when I go to Asylum. It was either that, or I just didn't know it was out yet. I can't remember exactly since it was so long ago, but with Origins, I think that with me not going in fully being hyped at this being Black Mask's game, it definitely helped a lot, although I do think it was a very odd choice to do this. They could have advertised with this being Batman and Joker's first encounter, but I don't know, it was just a little odd, although I was able to get over it. And besides that, I think it's a fun game. It has probably the most challenging boss fight in Deathstroke, unless you play Mr. Freeze on New Game Plus in Arkham City. Then that one takes a while because sometimes you have to reset if you don't do certain takedowns in a certain way. But I'll go back to that, when I go to Arkham City. But with Origins, yes, I think the story is very good. It is a solid story, and many interesting things happen. I do like Batman and Joker's relationship, and probably my biggest problem with it is the voice cast just isn't the same, and although I do know they hired different voice actors, it just doesn't feel as special with it not being Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill as Batman and Joker. Although I still really like it. They do have a solid voice cast. It's just not as good as what they had in the other games. And the combat in this is probably some of the most different. I think they're better than Asylum, because Asylum was still really trying to get into it. But with this one, playing it, we really could figure out that they didn't have the full idea of how to perfectly recreate it. Combat was still a little odd, and I can't think of the specifics right now. I just feel like it was always just a little off. They weren't able at WB Montreal, I believe, was the studio. They were not able to perfectly replicate the combat of Rex Study, but it was very close. And really, unless you've played the games a lot, like I have, then you won't notice too much of a difference. But I could just see that little bit of difference making the combat just not as good. But still, the combat in this one, like all the other games, is amazing. The gadget selection, I feel, is really good. I would say this has thinking of gadget selection, I would say Night has probably the best. And then I feel like this one is pretty close with City. So we could say that about a tie. But I feel like Asylum does have the worst selection. Although it's not by much. It just, isn't as fun compared to the other games. A good gameplay element for this one that is unique is the shock gloves, which I believe, unless you're playing the Wii U version of Arkham City, I think, which one of my friends has. I tried it out and I was kind of surprised to see I think there was shock gloves in it. But besides that, this is the only one in the mainstream systems version of the game where you could use the shock gloves. And the shock gloves are pretty useful. They definitely make combat a lot easier. Maybe too easy sometimes, since you could go through basically anything, including shields, armor, and more. So although I did like it, I am kind of glad they kept it out of the other games, because that might have made it way too easy, especially in Night, where you could go in, probably use a Fear Multi, and then that would probably charge up the shock gloves a bunch if it was in that game, and then those shock gloves will be able to be used to finish off everyone pretty quickly. But yeah, I think this was a good game, and for any questioning if it is canon or not, it is, since in Night you have references with Deathstroke fighting Batman on the boat, Firefly fighting Batman on the bridge, and you could also go around and interact with different types of evidence in the evidence lockup, which I will have a separate video on, me doing all the evidence lockup information, and also I'm going to be going and talking to all the different criminals and listening to all interview tapes in the game. I'll be doing that sometime soon. I don't know when. I'm going to be playing all of the DLC missions first for both the Night and Origins. But going back to this game, yeah, I think this was a fun game. Definitely enjoyable. although I do think it is the weakest out of them. It definitely has some interesting features. I have never really been able to play on the online mode because basically I think the servers are kind of down now, and I think you can only play them possibly through a PS3. And since I don't have a PS3, I can't play that. But I think both the Steam and Xbox servers have been permanently taken down, so I've never experienced it. But on Steam, I did get both the Deathstroke and Ninja Bruce Wayne DLC, and that's interesting. I think it's pretty different and unique to play as Deathstroke, and he's one of the few villains that you could ever permanently play as in challenge maps. And the all other ones are Joker in Arkham Asylum, and Harley Quinn in Arkham Knight, and I mean technically Red Hood, but I think that's really up to you to decide if you're going to count him as a villain at that point, although Red Hood does have an Arkham Knight skin. And when looking at this game's side missions, they're all pretty interesting. Thinking of them, you have some nice ones, although I haven't finished playing the side missions since I had to figure out how to resize it. I have played them all before, and of course we have Enigma, who is Riddler, and that, like all the other games, is pretty long and annoying at most points, but I still do like the games. I like going after him, it just sometimes takes a while. It is almost satisfying in both City and Night, where you get to torment him after. But with this game, you just really get him becoming the Riddler, with him fully escaping, and this is the only game where Riddler doesn't get arrested. But yeah, that side mission, although the longest and usually the worst of all these, you still have an enjoyable side quest, and the rest of the other side quests are all fun and enjoyable. You have a few that are pretty similar to Arkham City's, including destroying different drug containers and weapons crates to simulate the Titan containers. You have the crime scenes, which are pretty interesting, different and unique, and never were really in any other games to this extent, since you weren't going and solving random murders across the city, since this is the only one that takes place in a Gotham that people are actually in, although all of them are indoors since it's Christmas Eve and then I have a really bad blizzard. I mean, you're technically also playing on Christmas Day, but it's still the nighttime. So basically, at the same amount of time, the only people that are out are the police and criminals. So looking at the game for the rest of it, I think this game is good with all the side missions. Some of the more interesting ones, off the top of my head, includes Mad Hatter, and although I think the Black Mask one feels kind of disappointing at the end, another interesting one is figuring out the history of Cyrus Pinkley, the architect of Gotham. But really with everything else, yeah, I think this game's side missions were fun, including the main story was also fun. It's a good one, but is the weakest of the series. Now I'm going to go over Arkham Asylum, which was the first game in the series, and I do have a funny story about this. The first time I got it, I believe it was 2010, maybe 2011. I got the Game of the Year edition, and playing it when I was definitely younger, I was not as experienced with these types of games, and I definitely didn't fully know what to do. I really didn't know how to look up how to get help when you're really stuck on the internet. So I got to the part where you are doing the first ever detective room, and you have to scan for the liquor that Bulls dropped, and I did not know how to do it. I couldn't figure it out and kind of just put the game down for I think another year or two. And then when my brother decided to try again, because he was deciding to play it and figured it out, and he told me how you're supposed to do it. And from there I was able to complete the game. And it's just, a fun story about how I was a little more inexperienced with this. But now I can pretty quickly complete the games. And although I have not fully tried, I think, any of them on hard, I have completed both City and Night on New Game Plus. And one thing that really keeps me from doing it on Origins is the Deathstroke fight, which is pretty hard. And in Asylum, there is no New Game Plus mode, so you can't really do that. But I'm probably going to try it on hard mode soon. And Asylum, I think, looking at all of it, I think personally has the most solid story out of all of them. Although I do like the story of the other games. I personally like Asylum's story the most. I'd probably say City is after, then Night, finally Origins. And I think this is because Asylum basically is only story and Riddler. Riddler is always a constant in all these games, with him being Enigma and Origins. But in this one, the Riddler is probably the easiest, since you have to go and grab the maps, and that gives you the location of all of them. Then you have to do some pretty basic problem-solving skills around them, and that is the only side mission in this. And is why, although I think this does have the best story, it doesn't have the best side missions. It actually has the worst, since it is only Riddler, and Riddler is always the longest and most annoying parts of games in the Arkham series. But that's really just my opinion, and one I feel like I see a lot from other people. And yeah, let's go get to the campaign. This campaign, as I said earlier, is the strongest one. It is a compelling story between Batman and Joker, as Batman has to take down many of the different villains throughout Arkham, and goes into some intense ones, with some of the best being Scarecrow and Killer Croc. Sorry, I kind of blanked there for a second. And then the only thing I feel like that was kind of disappointing was Titan Joker, which, yeah, like as some other people said, seemed kind of ridiculous. But it was fine. It wasn't completely terrible, but it probably could have been a more interesting way to end the game. And looking at it, I think that this game definitely is fun, enjoyable, and was a very solid start. Although the combat is really at its weakest and most basic form here, it still is amazingly done and was definitely an achievement, especially for the time. And although with the Chronicles of Arkham, who it was extremely obvious, and I was able to figure it out the first time without looking up, any spoilers or anything long before, since it was pretty clearly read out in the voice of Quincy Sharp, and I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds like Sharp, and unless they want to try to pull off some subversion of expectations or something like that, then yeah, we're probably going to have it be turned out to be Quincy Sharp. And it was a surprise when I learned it was him. But yeah, really with this game, solid game, fun stuff. Although it was a little predictable in some parts, I don't really mind. Like that one I just mentioned, but some solid boss fights. And yeah, enjoyable game overall. Only weakness really is side missions, since there's only one of them, but they were able to realize and correct this mistake in all future games. Now it's time to go over Arkham City, which many consider to be the best in the franchise. I would say, yeah, it's probably the best overall, including side missions, which I think this one probably is the best in. Probably followed by, I would say, Night, since it has a few major disappointments like Firefly and Deathstroke. And then I would say Origins, which is like good overall, but doesn't have anything amazing. And finally, Asylum, which I mentioned previously is the worst one in side missions, since it only has Riddler, and since all games have Riddler, it's not really unique or special. But yeah, I'd say this is the best game all around. I think the story is good and fun and enjoyable, but the only small problem I have with it is it seems to take place a little too quickly. It feels pretty rushed, and if I had, I think, maybe 5 or 6 hours, I could go and complete this game fully, campaign, at least in that time period, especially if I go through things like skipping cutscenes. On the other ones, I would say Asylum would take maybe 10, maybe 8 hours at the most. Yeah, but this one, I can maybe beat it 3 or 4 hours without doing any crazy like glitches and speed running and stuff. And that's the main thing. I feel like with this game, although I really do enjoy it, it does have a good story. I feel like it's just a little too short, and it has the most Riddler trophies, even though it has the second smallest map in the series, since obviously Origins map has to be bigger since it includes all the map from this game plus a new section, and Arkham Knight's map is definitely the biggest. So we know that this is definitely bigger than Asylum, which if you had the ability to grapple boost and everything in that game, then you'd be able to go pretty high up, and you'd be able to fly across that map in like 5 or 6 seconds, since it is a very small contained map, which is good for that game. And it has a decent amount of other trophies in there, but this one has the most, and that gets kind of annoying. Side missions, of course, they are enjoyable. You have some fun, interesting ones like Zaz. You have some ones that are a little more mysterious, like the Identity Thief and Israel missions. And really, I think that maybe the weakest one I can think of is the Political Prisoners in Danger, which is a little more annoying than anything else, because you have to wait for them to spawn in, and that is just kind of annoying. I think that it was done a lot better with the firefighters in Arkham Knight, where they are in the same spots and will automatically load in, so you don't have to, especially if you have beat most of the game, just be gliding around and waiting for it. Another disappointing one was Deadshot, but that one too at least had some pretty interesting detective work up until it was pretty disappointing at the end of it. And we also had the Titan Container one, which wasn't really bad, but was just kind of, repetitive and boring at some points. But there was like 6 containers, and you could destroy 5 of the 6 of them before you meet with Bane. And then after you do that, the last one spawns in. That's the one in the Industrial District. Outside the steel mill, you could destroy that one, but the one outside of it. And that's the only one you really can't go in automatically destroy, so you have at least one, so you could have to go back to Bane. And with this one, yeah, the storyline, it was very interesting, having basically dual antagonists of Hugo Strange and the Joker, and it has some amazing boss fights, including Clayface, who was a nice boss fight at the end, a pretty fun one against Rachel Ghoul, although I don't love that one as much as other people do. I feel like a lot of people like it a lot more than me. I feel like it is an okay and fun fight. A lot of people praise it and think it's one of the best in the series, although I think it is fun. I don't know, it never really was my favorite. But then you do have Mr. Freeze with such a fun boss fight, and you have to take him down in different ways every time. And the one thing I always find odd is the one thing of information almost never comes up, telling you all the takedowns you could do. And if you play that in New Game Plus mode, you have to do every takedown. And with some of them, if you don't do it from the right spot, like a drop attack, you have to do it from on top of like a container and on top of the railing, or else you can't do a ledge takedown on him. And you have to get all these in and figure them out. And that one, I think it took me an hour to figure out how to do some of the other takedowns, since I really only played on the easy or normal difficulty and haven't had to do every single takedown. He also has the Detective Vision suppressor, which I knew for the first time really when I played New Game Plus. But although that is a lot tougher, it's still really fun and makes you have to think a lot. And really the only boss fight that is close to that is probably Deathstroke. And Deathstroke is one that is interesting because, like in Arkham Origins, you have to fight him hit for hit, and he can counter you pretty easily. And I really do enjoy that game. It is very fun, but I think this one's just so much better because you have to be very tactical, and I am a lot better playing stealth than I am at combat, although I am pretty good in combat. If you've seen a few of my playthroughs, and where I have to restart because I die, it's mainly in combat sections, and sometimes I mess up every once in a while in a Batmobile fight. But yeah, stealth is where my best part is at, and I maybe occasionally mess up every once in a while, but usually don't die and able to get out of there. The only time it really is if I have low armor and I'm on like a new game plus, and it's like a one-shot kill when you don't have maxed out bulletproof armor, and that's really the only time I ever die in a Predator encounter. But if playing on easy or normal mode, I can probably go into the entire game without dying once in a Predator encounter. But also, yeah, Mr. Freeze that makes some of the best ones since he both plays to my strengths and is just really fun. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the game. Fun game. Probably the biggest problem is kind of a short story, which still is really good. Although I wish it could have been maybe an hour longer, since it takes place over what I think like 9 hours. But you could beat it in like 3 or 4, maybe 5 if you keep all the cutscenes playing. And yeah, it's a pretty easy game. And well, if I had the time, I could probably beat it in 1 to 2 playthroughs of the game. But I think with it, I only had like hour-long sections, maybe hour and a half when I was playing it. And that's only to be the main campaign, not all the side missions and stuff. The game I play through, I had a bunch of side missions mixed in with it, so I can't get a perfect one. But I'd say it took maybe 4 to 5 hours for me to beat it. I'd say with about Origins and Asylum, I think it took me 6 or 7 hours. It took me about 10 hours to beat Night, and considering everything, those are pretty small complaints. And the game is the best overall, although story-wise, I like Asylum's more. And finally, Arkham Knight, which is a fun game. And one of the main things dragging it down is, I think, a lot of disappointing boss fights. Like I mentioned, a pretty weak Deathstroke fight in comparison, especially to the first one, but also it's just a simpler version of the Cloudburst fight. And Firefly, who was definitely not as fun as the bridge fight back in Arkham Origins, but it just has some fun ones, interesting ones, like Professor Pig. Deacon Blackfire is an interesting one, and we have a few other ones that are okay, like the firefighter ones. The militia stuff is typically fun, and yeah, I think it's overall some pretty enjoyable side missions, with a few ones that are extremely disappointing. And a lot of people complain about over the use of the Batmobile, but I am generally fine with it, with the exception of Cobra tanks. I hate going against those things. They're just really annoying and kind of poorly placed in the game, because if you think of it, if the Arkham was smart, you just send in like 2 Cobra tanks with a bunch of other tanks, and you automatically win because you're not supposed to be playing offense and stealth at the same time, and if there's not enough of those, you would almost definitely lose, but that would make you lose the game, and you would fail. Also, the cloudburst fight, super annoying, and if you saw the clip I uploaded from when I did it, I uploaded it separately because I, made this little mistake and got basically stuck between a shipping crate and the cloudburst tank. There was no way out, and I wouldn't be able to maneuver my way out without dying, so I just had to restart it. And that is probably the funniest mistake I've made. That boss fight is just ridiculously annoying. Not really that hard. It's just annoying. And I just hate the Cobra tanks of that. That's the only part of the Batmobile I don't like. I'm fine using it in basically any other situation. I don't mind all these tank fights that you do. Even the ones that have a lot, like the GCPD Siege one. And yeah, there's nothing really don't hate besides Cobra tanks and the Cloudburst. I think the one fight inside of the tunnels with the Arkham Knight's excavator, that's a fun one, where you definitely have to use your skills driving. The same for the APCs, which is a side quest, and that's just making sure you know both the streets well enough and a good enough at driving to be able to take them down, since you have to keep up with them, and if you're good enough, you're able to ram them and take damage. Oh, and another disappointing side missions is Hush, which had a great build-up in Arkham City, and kind of fell flat in the end. It wasn't too interesting. Ooh, but Man-Bat, that's fun. Now let's kind of go into the story, which I think is a pretty solid story, and I definitely enjoyed it. I think the storyline was very well done. I was very interested, and although the Arkham Knight reveal kind of felt a little obvious and maybe they could have done someone else, it was still good enough. I do like the Arkham Knight as a character, and do like this game. As I said, although it's my third favorite, or you could say second least favorite, it still is a fun, enjoyable game. I love the multi-takedowns you could do. I love how different this game is and how unique it is. I like using the Batmobile. It's fun, and unlike most people, I don't think it's being overused and hate it. And the Joker stuff, although unnecessary, was still fun and interesting, and it was great to have, especially if you complete all the side missions before you beat the game, since he had some fun comment for each of them, which I didn't do, but could do in the future. And really, yeah, it's a fun game. Although the one thing I kind of have to say is a problem that they should have included is some sort of Scarecrow boss fight, since he was the main villain of the game, and it was just really a very easy Joker beat up part at the end, with the last real boss fight being the Arkham Knight, but that takes place a few hours before the end. In fact, let me go check that quickly. I will be right back. And after checking my playthroughs, it was still about an hour and a half of gameplay. I'm rounding up a little. I think it was like an hour, 20 something minutes. But just to say, for 3 days, an hour and a half. And I did cut out all deaths and stuff I had there. So, yeah, that boss fight happens pretty early in terms of how much is left in the game. And that's one of the things I feel like we should have had, some sort of Scarecrow boss fight, especially since the original was so great. And I think this game really nothing else. Say that much. The Seasoned Infamy DLC, which I did say I would mention, is fun, unique, and different. I feel like the weakest one of them is probably Mad Hatter, but that's also, at least to me, probably, it's still pretty good. And thinking of it, I want to still play it, although you do need kind of a controller to do it if you're not amazing at PC gaming, because I had it free through, I think, Epic Game Store, and I could not beat that individual mission, and just got the collection on sale on Steam because I could not complete that one side mission because the controller wouldn't connect to that, and it was just way too annoying not to be able to beat. I think it was the final stage of that side mission because you have to think use the mouse or something. I can't remember exactly, but it's just not working that well. And yeah, that's really it. I enjoy these games a lot. They're all good, fun, and unique in their own ways, and are really fun games. So I would say they're all definitely great. And if I had to put them on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably say Origins is at a 7, Knights an 8, Asylum and City are probably both at either 9s or 10s. Pretty close, but Asylum would be, if we go decimal wise, just above City. Because I just like the story more. But they're very close. And with content, look out for a few other videos this week. I should be getting a copy of The Long Halloween later today, as in the day I'm recording this. I'm going to try to get to Target or Walmart and to get a copy of it. But if it's not out on DVD and there was a mistake made, then I will not be recording it and reviewing it until the DVD is out, since I only watched them like that. And I don't know what I'll do on Thursday then. Have that open just in case. And I'll have my Arrowverse review out tomorrow. As I say, with the Loki one. And Friday is General Grievous' Starfighter review. And finally, on Saturday I'll have a Bad Batch review. And I'll probably be playing, if I have not already completed, I'm not really sure what my streaming plans are. I'm probably going to stream a few of the side missions, or DLC to Arkham Knight, both Monday, which was yesterday, and on other days this week, probably Thursday night, while I wait for the Bad Batch episode. But yeah, I'm just really excited to do that stuff, and can't wait to continue on with the DLC to these games. And I will see you in the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please like the video. leave some comments, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. And may the force be with you.